Isolated militia be necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Cam Edwards, your host, glad that you've joined us today. Got a busy show for you on the program here in mere moments. Our friend Jim Geraghty joins us from National Review Online. He recently took a look at Elizabeth Warren's gun control proposals now that she is, in many polls, the new Democratic frontrunner. Joe Biden kind of slipping right now. Pete Buttigieg, I don't know if I'm ever going to know how to pronounce that guy's name. Pete Buttigieg, something like that, right? Yeah, something like that. He's doing better in the polling. It seems like everybody, well, not everybody. There are like 24 candidates, so not everybody has a chance to rise and fall. Some candidates like Beto O'Rourke just kind of flatlined at 1 or 2% their entire presidential campaign. But Buttigieg is getting a second or third look from a lot of folks, I think, now as Joe Biden is kind of stumbling. But Elizabeth Warren really seems to be the candidate who has taken advantage of Joe Biden's declining poll numbers. That's one reason why Michael Bloomberg has gotten in, as a matter of fact. We talked about that as well with our friend Jim Geraghty from National Review, taking a deep dive into Elizabeth Warren's gun control agenda, as well as taking a look at Michael Bloomberg's presidential prospects as well. Take a look and a listen. Jim, thank you, sir, for coming on the program. It's good talking with you today.
Cam, I always enjoy it.
Even when the topic is not so great, such as, now listen, this was a great article about Elizabeth Warren and her gun control agenda, but the ideas that Elizabeth Warren has, not so great. I mean, we've seen a lot of attention paid to, Beto O'Rourke, who's no longer a candidate, and his hell yes, we're coming for your guns. But Elizabeth Warren is the front runner right now in a lot of these polls, and her gun control proposals are frankly just as extreme and just as out there as Beto O'Rourke's were when he was a candidate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's part of it that we are still only in November. People may or may not be paying as much attention. There are more Democratic candidates than we've ever had before. And so maybe if you see the headline, Elizabeth Warren plan or something like that, and maybe people don't read that far into it. There's certainly very few people, unless you really have an interest in this issue, you're not going to go online and say, okay, what's in this Elizabeth Warren gun violence plan? It's a plan to deal with gun violence. How could anyone oppose that? I'm pretty sure she's opposed to it. So, that must be pretty good. And of course, it's not that great. So the specifics of it that jump out. And again, I think of myself as being fairly astute and following this race pretty closely. I had not had a chance to look through it. And of course, she is, arguably the front runner. She's actually, Buttigieg has apparently got the lead in Iowa, but she's polling quite strong there, doing well in New Hampshire. And among the proposals in there are quintupling the federal tax on ammunition, tripling the tax on firearms purchases, creating a federal licensing system as well as the existing state ones. I'm not really sure how that would pass constitutional muster. And limiting the number of guns a person can purchase. Now, I had pointed this out the other day in the context of the overall state of the Democratic race, and there was a front page story in the Washington Post yesterday that pointed out Democrats realize that, we always hear, maybe this year there's going to be a convention fight and all that stuff. But look, you've never had a field this big. You've got arguably 4 candidates in the big tier. Bernie Sanders is about a bazillion years old. He had a heart attack, and he's still in the mid to high teens in most places. This is the guy who got 43% last time around. So my sense is if you're a Bernie Sanders supporter right now, you are pretty much locked in. Mm-hmm. You are, you probably voted for him 4 years ago. You as far as you're concerned, he's your guy. You're ready to see the Bolshevik Revolution. The heart attack would have been the perfect chance if you had any lingering doubts to say, you know what, I love the guy, but I think it's time for somebody younger. So that's 15 to 20% he's got in all these states. Cam, look, stranger things have happened, but I don't see them easily jumping to Elizabeth Warren or anybody else. So you could very well have this Democratic primary that with the votes, Iowa caucuses are February 1st. It could go into late winter. It could go into spring, and theoretically, it could go all the way to the convention. Or you could end up with a scenario where nobody ends with enough delegates, and then you do get the scenario that every political reporter has been dreaming about for decades now, a contested fight at the convention. God knows if it'll happen like that. But again, Yeah, the other point I was making in this column in the Morning Jolt of Monday was that, look, if you're the Democrats and your sole focus was, we want to win back the presidency, we want to win the voters that we lost in 2016, right? You look at those upper Midwest states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Maybe you're looking at Iowa and Ohio as well. And you're like, okay, who do we need? Who do we have? Who are the voters who drifted away? And a big chunk of it is obviously white working class. And, listeners have heard a great deal about that. But look, the National Rifle Association in 2016 put an enormous amount of money and effort into reaching women gun owners. And the message was very clear and direct. Hillary Clinton is going to take away your gun. She's going to take away your right to have a firearm for your own personal protection. And a whole bunch of women who were not necessarily diehard Donald Trump supporters. Maybe they had issues with what he said on Access Hollywood. Maybe they had issues with his personal behavior and some of his other stances. But when push came to shove, they did not like the thought of Hillary Clinton getting elected and no longer being able to have a gun for personal protection. That's an issue that really hits people close to home, so to speak. It gets them in their heart.
It absolutely does. And to that point, when Elizabeth Warren talks about raising taxes on firearms and ammunition, jacking up the tax on firearms to, what was it, 30%, ammunition, 50% tax, she even says in her policy proposal that it's time for Congress to raise those rates both to reduce new gun and ammunition sales overall and to bring in federal revenue that we can use for gun violence prevention and enforcement of existing gun laws. Jim, she's saying, I want to price people out of a right. I want the government to step in and make it unaffordable for people to purchase firearms and ammunition. I mean, if she's talking about reducing the numbers of guns and amount of ammunition sold, the only reason that that's going to happen because of increased taxes is because it is going to become prohibitory, for individuals who are not going to be able to afford to exercise their constitutional rights. And she can couch it in whatever sort of, vague, fuzzy language she wants. But that ultimately is what she's saying here. She's telling those women in those battleground states, I want you to have to choose between your right of self-defense and putting food on your table or, making sure your kids have new school clothes, things of that nature.
Yeah, and even if you happen to be able to afford your firearm, even if you happen to be able to afford your ammunition, well, you're not going to be able to afford a lot of spares to go practice the range. You're certainly not going to be able to make sure that you feel safe and you feel confident in your skills. You'll just have to roll the dice when you hear glass breaking in the middle of the night and hope that your skill with a firearm is sufficient.
Yeah. It's amazing. It really is an and it's funny too, because, all of these candidates talk about, I love the Second Amendment. I'm just in favor of a few common sense gun safety laws. Making it more expensive to train is not a good gun safety tip, right? That actually that's bad when it comes to real gun safety.
Yeah. Now, if Warren were here, she'd say, Tam, my common sense gun safety law is to make it unaffordable for everyone. That's just common sense. Yeah. But I think I'm just going to throw out here, and not to freak everybody out. Look, there's a lot of road, between now and Election Day 2020. But, most of the time you're like, you know what, we've got, we think it's a pro-gun majority on the Supreme Court. There's no way the Supreme Court would allow them to do that. Well, look, the federal government could probably, feasibly, the Warren administration could feasibly argue, look, we're not banning anything. We're simply, exercising our federal power of raising tax rates on a particular product because people, as long as they're wealthy, can still purchase a firearm. We are not. This is not a backdoor way of eliminating the Second Amendment. And I want to take everybody back to the Obamacare fight because there was this argument about the government was going to start enacting a penalty on you if you did not purchase health insurance. This is what the individual mandate was about. And this whole the whole time Obamacare was being debated in Congress, the Obama administration and most Democrats insisted this is not a tax. We are not raising your taxes. It is a penalty. It's totally different. Don't say that Obamacare raises your taxes. It totally doesn't. The moment it gets legally challenged in court by various Republican states attorney generals who say, no, this is, they turn around and say, no, the government's not making you buy anything. All we did was raise taxes on you if you didn't buy it. So, yes, it totally was a tax. Remember all those times you said it wasn't a tax? It totally was a tax. So here's this big decision, and it comes right before, I believe, the 2012 election. And Republicans felt pretty good about this. I mean, besides the fact they exposed that, Democrats have been lying through their teeth when they insisted it wasn't a tax. they felt like this was in sufficiently legally sketchy or gray area ground that the Supreme Court was not going to be comfortable saying, yes, the federal government has the power to make you purchase something if you don't want to. That this is going into a realm of power and authority over citizens that the government had not gone into. And push came to shove. And remember, this is a huge battle in the summer of 2012. And John Roberts, appointed by George W. Bush, and who a whole bunch of folks on the right had felt, warm and fuzzy towards, he changed his mind. He initially went into this saying, yes, this is an extension of power. And then it realized it was going to be a 5-4 decision that would have undone the individual mandate. And that would have been a, political nuke, right in the middle of the 2012 election. Mm-hmm. Roberts changed his mind. And oh, by the way, there had been this very clear public, some would say an intimidation campaign, let's just say a very public argument from Patrick Leahy and other Democrats who said the legitimacy of the Supreme Court is at stake in this decision. That if they decide to make this decision, they're intervening in the election and, they're, partisan and blah, blah, blah. And as a result, Roberts said, you know what, this really is a tax. It's a normal exercise of government power. Whether we approve of it or not, the government has the authority to do this. Cam, I don't know if Warren wins and this becomes enacted and there's a legal challenge, it goes all the way up to the Supreme Court. Look, do I think the Supreme Court would say, no, this is a backdoor way of trying to limit the Second Amendment rights? Probably. But I think the decision on the individual mandate says you shouldn't, stake your right to own a gun on it.
Yeah.
You never really know until the Supreme Court renders its decision and holds that vote.
Well, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I think, frankly, one of my other concerns if Elizabeth Warren becomes president, she says it repeatedly in some of her policy proposals, including her gun control policy platform, we need to get rid of the filibuster. Right. We need to nuke the filibuster, get rid of the filibuster. We've already seen 5 Democratic senators very recently tell the Supreme Court, listen, if you agree to hear this New York City gun case, which is coming up for oral arguments in December 2nd, and you end up striking down this New York City gun law, we're going to view that as the court's illegitimacy and a need for the court to be restored to health, meaning they're going to pack the court. Right. Yeah. So, I think we can talk about what the existing Supreme Court might do with any number of these proposals by Warren or the other candidates. But I think that there is also a legit concern that if Warren becomes president, we won't see a 9-justice Supreme Court. It may be 11 or 14 or whatever they feel is necessary to pack the court and, guarantee that all of their legislative agenda items are going to be upheld by the court.
Yeah, and look, we can sometimes be snarky when you and I chat every now and then, and we say, look, the Democrats' measurement of legitimacy about a Supreme Court decision is whether or not they agree with it.
Yeah,
but that is kind of how they seem to approach these sorts of things. That you never hear on Roe versus Wade was plenty controversial, but there was never any the Supreme Court has lost its legitimacy. Various other Obergefell, right? Gay marriage. A lot of Americans still opposed gay marriage when that decision came down. And you know what? There was no question about the Supreme Court is now, no longer as legitimate as it used to. Look, we have a constitution. The Supreme Court does get a great deal of power, which is one of the reasons most of us prefer the idea of what, great irony, John Roberts had said in his confirmation testimony, that the Supreme Court's job is to be the umpire, call balls and strikes. Their job is not to shape policy. Their job is not to push American policy in one direction or another. Their sole job is to basically have, Congress passes the laws, the president signs them into law. If somebody says, hey, wait a minute, that violates the Constitution, goes up to the Supreme Court, and the job of the Supreme Court is to say, does this law comply with the Constitution or not? And if it's not constitutional, nope, you got to get rid of it. Can't keep it anymore. That's what it's supposed to do. You hear about some of these other justices who are not as fond of citing foreign law and talking about their need to, guys, by being on the court for a lifetime appointment and, knowing that impeachment or removing an existing Supreme Court is never going to happen in our lifetime. We know, even though I understand Democrats talk about impeaching Brett Kavanaugh every other day, and sometimes they say because they don't like Trump, and Trump is never legitimately elected, well, we got to get rid of Gorsuch as well, and you know what? We're still mad about Clarence Thomas. We're going to impeach him too. Okay. You guys are taking forever to get like this impeachment of the president, moving faster and moving as fast and easy as a kidney stone. But that's but you guys are going to go take out 3 Supreme Court justices too. Okay, guys. Anyway, they want what they want, and they don't really care what path they have to get there. So, it is one of those things. Like, look, if you are a gun owner. And there are Democrats in the past who have respected the Second Amendment, the Jim Webbs of the world. Look, I think they're much rarer than they used to be. Jim Webb's not in any office these days, but and you can't look at Elizabeth Warren and say, oh, she would let me keep my gun. She's only trying to prevent school shootings and the really bad cases or something like that. She has made very clear her goal is to cut down on the number of gun sales in this country by any means necessary. And that should make gun owners really nervous about an Elizabeth Warren presidency.
Absolutely. All right. One bonus question for you. Michael Bloomberg, still dipping his toes into the water, hasn't officially declared, but he's now on the ballot in Alabama. And over the weekend, he went to a church in Brooklyn, Jim, and did a mea culpa, did a complete 180 on stop and frisk, which he has been a huge proponent of. Back in 2015, I believe it was, went to the Aspen Institute, did a big talk that he ultimately refused to allow to be shown because of some of the things that he said. Things like, one way to reduce violent crime is to throw young minority men up against the wall and frisk them. He talked about how, stupid these kids were, how, it was a joke to them. We got to take guns away from young minority males between the ages of 15 and 25. Now he's running for president. These views do not align with the Democratic base, although they might love his gun control laws. They don't want to necessarily see them enforced the way that Michael Bloomberg has enforced them in the past. What do you think about Bloomberg, reversing course on stop and frisk? And frankly, I'm curious just to get your take. Is there a lane for Bloomberg in the Democratic primary that you see?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, Cal, I'm going to say, I can hear the tone in your voice, and I think you're being a little bit unfair. Everybody has to recognize it. Back when Mike Bloomberg said this, he was mayor of New York City. He was trying to deal with what he saw as out-of-control gun violence, and now he's running for the Democratic nomination. So that changed.
That's right.
And you can't say that that's why he changed his mind. Democrats couldn't punish him for having that stance then, but now they can. So he no longer believes that. That's basically what's at work here. No, this is clearly a reflection of that position is unpopular. I don't have it anymore. No, I changed my mind on that. And as for, does he have a lane? Well, the nice thing about being a billionaire, Cam, is that if the road is too narrow, you have enough funds to just expand the lane. And all that. There is a part of me that would laugh so hard I would probably pee myself if the choices for America in 2020 became, which narcissistic billionaire from New York do you like better, America? Between a Trump and Bloomberg matchup. I think he's got a very difficult road. I think that, but I think, one is the indication is that the fact that he's jumping in, the fact that Deval Patrick's jumping in, I think it indicates, look, the Democratic establishment, right? The donor class and the elected lawmakers and all the people who are, they all kind of figured Biden would be fine. And the evidence is mounting week by week, month by month, that Biden's not fine. And I think, look, age catches up to all of us, but Biden is looking pretty shaky out there. And so they're like, okay, the other two options are the other big options are Warren and Sanders. And all of a sudden you have this new interest in Buttigieg. The Democrats who are not quite comfortable with the Bolshevik Revolution. Howard Schultz Democrats, right? I'm wealthy and I want to stay wealthy, but I'm perfectly okay with, making gestures about saving the earth and, affirmative action and abortion and all that stuff. Those folks are all of a sudden like, oh my goodness, we might be dealing with Warren. And of course, even Democrats on Wall Street are like, okay, this woman hates us. We can't support this one. We will, deal with Trump for another 4 years rather than deal with a woman who loathes us with the power of 1,000 suns going supernova. And so all of a sudden there's a little bit of a panic in the Democratic side. Boy, you think Wall Street Democrats, Michael Bloomberg is, there and reporting for duty. And I think look, there are a whole bunch of reasons Michael Bloomberg would have a tough time winning the Democratic nomination. Having said that, he can always bring like $100 million to the table just with the snap of his fingers.
In every
and
state.
That's a big deal in politics.
I mean, honestly, right? No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, the last time that I wrote about this, I said that there are billions of reasons for gun owners to be concerned about a Bloomberg candidacy, no matter how far-fetched the idea might seem. I think, first of all, not only does he have, the financial resources to play in every state and to even go into these late states, but he's got, a grassroots network in Moms Demand Action and Every Town for Gun Safety that, listen, I'm not a campaign finance attorney, so I'm sure that there would be some rules and regs about using those organizations for a presidential campaign, but I bet he's got attorneys who could figure out a way to do it legally, Jim. And so I think that he's got that infrastructure, a get out the vote infrastructure, and a grassroots base that he could tap into if he decides to go ahead and take the plunge.
Yeah, all of these groups are already used to seeing Michael Bloomberg as a generous benefactor. Would you, and so the question to them is, would you like to see your pre-existing generous benefactor become president of the United States? Right? Yeah. For all of those activists, it's yes, please. Yes, I will go out and I will knock on doors. Yes, I will go out and I will do whatever it takes on there. One other thing one other thing, you and I have, been making fun of Michael Bloomberg for years, and we like to mock him for the large soda ban and the fact that he's got god-awful eating habits, the only man in the world that I can make fun of the eating habits of, in terms of salty foods and all that stuff. He wanted to ban the large sodas, but he left the yuppie frappuccinos alone and all that kind of stuff. I was chatting with a moderate Democrat from northern New Jersey, and somebody who does not align with my views, much more supportive of gun control than I am.
Okay.
But she had this perception that Michael Bloomberg had been a really good mayor, and that he was a really good administrator, and he was a guy who could solve problems. And then I rattled off, all of Bloomberg's greatest hits. And yeah, he's killed fewer groundhogs than the current mayor of New York City. You can say that for him. But by and large, and there is by the way, I think also you look at the Bloomberg era in New York City, which runs from about 2002 to just a few years ago. If you're wealthy in New York City, it's great. If you're poor in New York City, he certainly did his part to, make sure that you felt like you were taken care of by spending a huge amount of money. When he won his reelection, he was spending in the category of like $75 per vote.
Oh, more than that. I think it was 100, right? 106, I think.
Right. I mean, he started out as a Republican, then went independent. He won those races by just deluging. Deluge? I don't know if deluge is a verb, but he could afford to purchase the dictionaries and make deluge a verb if he needs to just wash out everybody else in this tidal wave of money. Anyway, it's New York City. It's not easy for somebody who's not a Democrat to win, and he just outspent every last one of them. So, on the one hand, you and I really enjoy making fun of him and predicting that he will come up short in this primary fight. But I also think that this is not somebody who necessarily should completely underestimate, because for whatever reason, New Yorkers did not come out of this. As you and I had noticed in one of our conversations, this guy banned dancing like this John Lithgow in Footloose, and New Yorkers were all cool with it. Tough, independent-minded. Nobody tells us what to do. New Yorkers like, okay.
Yeah, and that that third election campaign where he spent over $100 a vote, it was the most expensive mayoral election in history. He kind of squeaked by. I mean, all things considered, I think he won by maybe 4 or 5 points. I mean, it was not the runaway victory, but it didn't have to be. Right. He won, and that's all that mattered. And nobody talks about Michael Bloomberg, who squeaked into a third term. No, they say Michael Bloomberg, the 3-term mayor of New York. The institutional memory of the American voter is very short when it comes to, margins of victory and things of that nature. What ultimately matters is the outcome. And you're right. He has shown that he can spend whatever is necessary to get the job done, whether it's his own campaign or, you look at Virginia and the recent elections that we had here and the millions of dollars that he spent, which was basically pocket change. It was, $3.5 million, I think, that Every Town for Gun Safety spent in the state. Huge money for state legislative races, but no real big deal for Michael Bloomberg. And again, he got what he wanted. He got an anti-gun legislature in the state of Virginia for the first time in 26 years. Gun owners are going to have to pay the price. So I think you're right. I think it as much as we might like to snark and mock, and frankly, as much as we should not. What's the line from Star Wars that you like so much? Don't get cocky, kid. Right? You can make fun of Bloomberg and his ban happy habits, but acknowledge the guy is getting his way when he, gets involved in races right now. And
we can point out a candidate who had a net worth of $50,000, who had exactly the same stances as Bloomberg, speaking skills as Bloomberg, appearance of Bloomberg, everything else, and he would get nowhere. That's fine.
Yeah.
But Michael Bloomberg is the 11th richest man in the world, I believe, and you just can't scoff at that. That's an enormous amount of resources to bring to any endeavor, including a presidential campaign, and that's there
absolutely.
You go.
All right. Well, listen, maybe it'll come down to Bloomberg versus Warren. How about how exciting would that Democratic primary be?
Who do we root for in that one besides injury?
We root for the groundhog. Jim Geraghty, thank you as always, sir. Good talking with you today. Hope we get a chance to do this again soon.
All right, we'll do it again. Take care.
All right, National Review's Jim Geraghty joining us here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company. All right, let's get to today's armed citizen story, our good deed of the day, as well as our recidivist report, which is where we will start. News Channel 5 in Nashville, Tennessee. I've talked about them a couple of times over the last few weeks. They've been doing this series throughout the entire November sweeps period, looking at the broken juvenile justice system. And I got to tell you, I mean, I love to rip on the media as much as the next person, but when you see good reporting done, I think that needs to be called out. And this has been, honestly, a fantastic and really eye-opening series by the network there, or the channel in Nashville, Tennessee, Channel 5, WTVF. And so, again, they've been looking at the juvenile justice system. The series is called Broken, which tells you kind of what they found. Their latest story about violent juveniles committing new crimes while they are on probation. As WTVF reported, in truth, the investigation discovered that nobody has been closely watching these juveniles to be able to intervene before they go on violent rampages, because the Department of Children's Services considers it to be, quote, too difficult. Yeah, they quote Davidson County Juvenile Court Administrator Kathy Sinbach as saying they do not sound the alarm, they do not respond with a sense of urgency. And WTVF notes one particular case, 16-year-old Deontay Gooch Blacksmith. Back in October, the TV station reports, the Metro Police Department's Juvenile Crime Task Force was looking for Deontay Gooch Blacksmith for days, already a repeat violent offender at the time. He was supposed to be under supervision of the Department of Children's Services, but the agency had simply lost track of him. They didn't know where he was. Lieutenant Blaine Whited with the Nashville Police said, "We were afraid there'd be another robbery or somebody being injured in the commission of a robbery or auto theft," something along those lines. So it was a very high priority, they say, to get him back into the system before any of our community members got hurt. He was 13 years old when he was arrested for auto theft back in 2017. At age 15, arrested for aggravated robbery, ordered to remain under DCS supervision. He was arrested on a theft charge out of Sumner County, Tennessee earlier this year. He was put on DCS probation until 2020. In June of this year, at age 16, he was arrested for aggravated robbery, accused of jumping into a woman's car with a handgun and robbing her. But the Department of Children's Services did not revoke his probation at that time, even though he stood accused of a very violent crime. 2 months later, so now it's August of this year, he's arrested again, charged with especially aggravated robbery, shooting a man in the stomach at a truck stop during an attempted robbery. DCS did not take him into custody. 2 arrests for violent crimes in the span of 2 months for this juvenile. Instead, they slap an ankle monitor on him and let him back out on the streets. He stops charging the ankle monitor, and then he disappeared. And they didn't know where to find him. He was eventually taken into custody after officers spotted him driving a stolen car. Police say he refused to stop. They had to deploy spike strips to, cause the tires to go flat. Lieutenant White with the Metro Police Department said a lot can go wrong with that. That's the last thing we ever want to do. But we had to get involved with it because we had to remove him off of the streets before a community member got hurt. Now, again, this is one case of several that WTVF report on in their series. So this is not the anomaly. What they're trying to tell the folks in Nashville is that this is the norm. when you have juveniles who are arrested time and time again for violent crimes, while they are out on bond or probation for other offenses, they are still not being confined. They are still being slapped with a GPS monitoring device that they don't have to charge, and then it stops working, and then they disappear. In other words, very serious crimes and very serious criminals are being treated very unseriously by the system there in Tennessee. All right, let's get to today's armed citizen story from Cocoa Beach, Florida, where a concealed carry holder ended up shooting a suspect after he tried to attack the concealed carry holder and a security guard. Now, we don't have a lot of information about this case. I imagine we'll learn, hopefully, a little bit more. But the Cocoa Beach Police Department is investigating. It started, they say, when two drunk guys walked into a Wawa. That sounds like the start of a really good joke, but this was no laughing matter. Two drunk guys walk into a Wawa, got into an argument with a security guard inside. Security guard then escorts the two outside after a fight broke out. And as the two drunk individuals are outside, the concealed carry holder walked out, make sure that everything was okay. Police say that one of them, quote, aggressively moved towards the man, and that's when he fired. The injured suspect taken to a local hospital, last reported as stable. Police say the shooter said that he acted in self-defense. Again, the investigation continues right now. That's what it looks like. We'll give you any more details as they become available. And our good deed of the day today from West Virginia, South Charleston, West Virginia, where a police officer in the right place at the right time and really going above and beyond to help out a young mom who was really just facing a sort of desperate moment. Amanda Holstein is the mom's name, and she found herself in a Walmart not long ago. She needed pull-ups for her baby. She had no money. She didn't know what to do. She said, I didn't know who else to call. I knew that I was in South Charleston. The police department's right there. It was the only person I knew to call. So she picked up the phone and she called the police department. Officer Brandon Keene heard what was going on. You know, rather than, again, shoplift something, she said it had been 2 days since her daughter had pull-ups. She just wanted to get something so that her daughter didn't get, an infection or a rash or anything down there. And Officer Keene heard what was going on. And according to Amanda Holstein, she said he came up there and he bought the pull-ups for me. I only needed one, but he insisted on buying 4 packs. He helped out more than I can imagine, and I am grateful. She said that initially she was hesitant to share the story, a little embarrassed, right? She said, I know other moms need help out there, and I'm not the only one that struggles. She wanted to repay him, but he would not take her money. He said, I didn't expect anything in return. I just wanted to help her out and get her on her feet. So she showed up at the South Charleston Police Department not long ago with a gift for Officer Keene. You can see that in his hands. It's a candle that Amanda Holstein made for him. She said, officers usually only get attention when one does bad. And I thought if I could be that one person that shares a good story with them, then it might go somewhere. And I might change somebody else's opinion about them. So we will put up a link to Amanda's Custom Candles Facebook group, along with our story at Bearing Arms Cam and Company on today's program, if you would like to help Amanda out, but in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. Officer Brandon Keene with the South Charleston, West Virginia Police Department. We thank you for your very good deeds, sir. That is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. We will have another armed citizen story for you, another recidivism report, another good deed of the day, as well as all of the latest Second Amendment news and information from all across the nation, including an attempt right now to try to revive gun control in the U.S. Senate. I don't think it's going to be successful. But thank you again for being a part of today's program. Don't forget, you can subscribe to Bearing Arms Cam and Company at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, townhall.com's podcast page as well, Town Hall Media at YouTube. And you can also become a VIP member of Bearing Arms, you'll get access to exclusive content, editors' chats, and more, and you will be supporting the work that we do each and every day, bringing you the latest Second Amendment news and information, so we certainly do appreciate that. Appreciate all of the input, by the way, all of the emails I received after yesterday's program. We're going to get to more of your unconventional ideas for gun control. See, I started the music too soon this time. We're going to get to more of your unconventional ideas about arguments to sway folks who support gun control in the next coming days, so make sure that you check that out. I'll bring the music back up underneath. Don't want Aaron in Nebraska to get upset that he didn't get the full music there. Anyway, thank you again for being a part of the program. We'll see you tomorrow with another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company.